Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. You know, that 5-for-1 Bergdahl Gitmo deal stunk from the get-go. Why release those 5? The worst of the worst, the upper echelon of the Taliban, commanders, recruiters, not simple battlefield soldiers. Rehabilitated, reformed. Their sole mission is to battle and die defending Allah. Death is the culture that they live in. So what's the point of releasing them? You don't let a baby swim in shark-infested waters because the outcome is inevitable. But the Obama administration at that time said, nothing to worry about, folks. Take a listen.
I wouldn't be doing it if I thought that it was contrary to American national security. And we have confidence that we will be in a position to go after them if, in fact, they are engaging in activities that threaten our defenses.
There were sufficient mitigation steps taken by Qatar and assurances received by the United States that these detainees do not pose a threat to U.S. national security.
These 5 guys are not a threat to the United States. They are a threat to the safety and security of Afghanistan and Pakistan.
And those assurances relating to the movement, the activities, the monitoring of those detainees give us confidence that they cannot and in all likelihood will not pose a significant risk to the United States.
But this week, U.S. officials confirmed that one of the 5 is attempting to return to terrorist activity with the Taliban. Now, there's a shock. And I'm not talking about White House ineptitude. I'm talking about an enemy so hardened and so determined that they are willing to play the silly little games that we are so naively willing to believe that they'll be good boys, proven by the fact that they've taken up yoga and they plan to go home and start farming. I didn't know the Taliban grew anything other than opium. So how does the White House get out of this? The Pentagon's Admiral Kirby.
We remain confident, as we were when we sent them there, that the assurances we received are sufficient enough to help us mitigate any future threat that these individuals might pose.
So, Admiral Kirby, I guess the White House was wrong or didn't tell the truth. Oh, I get it now. He really was a threat, but it's a threat you can handle. But that pesky question, why 5-for-1? The same one whose platoon soldiers called a deserter in the midst of combat an act punishable by death, and who very well may be charged with some form of desertion. Why not trade 1 for 1? We might have been able to use the other 4 terrorists as leverage to save other American hostages. But wait a minute, I forgot we don't negotiate with terrorists. So let me see if I get this. An American like James Foley is held for 2 years and then beheaded. We don't negotiate for him. But we do negotiate for someone who is widely believed to be a deserter both inside and outside the Pentagon. Since when do we trade mass murderers for someone like this guy Bergdahl? Remember, Mr. President, you never told Congress, as you were legally required to, that you were doing this lopsided deal. Maybe you needed those hugs with Bergdahl's mom and dad in the Rose Garden. But even then, there was something that wasn't right. And don't give me this hogwash that these are prisoners of war who have to be freed when we leave Afghanistan. First of all, we haven't left Afghanistan. There are still 10,000 Americans there. We know that you don't like the military, but why replenish the enemy when the number of remaining American troops is at its lowest? A little primer here. Gitmo detainees are not prisoners of war. The Taliban is not a country. They don't wear a uniform. They don't follow chain of command. They don't carry arms openly, and they kill civilians. As such, they are enemy combatants who can be held indefinitely or until they cease to be a danger to us. No, Mr. President, I know you don't like terms like Islamic extremist and jihad, but now you don't like the word terrorist? Now the Taliban are not terrorists?
Well, I'd also point out that the Taliban is an armed insurgency. ISIL is a terrorist group, so we don't make concessions to terrorist groups. We feel
the Taliban is a terrorist group?
I don't think that the Taliban is an armed insurgency.
Okay, they're now an armed insurgency. You know, you can parse this crap out whatever way you want, but here's the bottom line. They kill Americans, they're terrorists. They kill school children, they're terrorists. And just yesterday, this so-called armed insurgency, the Taliban proudly took credit for killing 3 Americans. And you want to call them armed insurgents? So I say to myself, what difference does it make? Here's the difference. Since you did negotiate with terrorists and you're not supposed to negotiate with terrorists, you can't call them terrorists. So now you have to call them armed insurgents. Armed insurgent is not even a recognized legal designation. Mr. President, you make this stuff up as you go along. Who are you trying to not offend this time? The Taliban? You think not calling them terrorists will just make everything better? Or did you get your hand caught in the cookie jar where you negotiated not only a bad deal, but a deal that you weren't supposed to make in the first place? Mr. President, stop playing games with words and start recognizing that we're in a war. What the American people see is less of a war, though, and more of a war on words. It's time for you to stop playing games. You didn't release, you unleashed 5 Taliban terrorists, and you have teed up more danger for America.